This is the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
No, they don't feel the same urgency that we do. But why should they? For them, business is good. Business is very good. 7 of the 10 wealthiest suburbs are suburbs of Washington, D.C.
The conservative traditional values of Governor Palin are shared by so many great Americans across this country. And as you know, we've had many different types of guests here on the Palin Update. Today, a man who's been in your home at some point over the years, at least through the TV. Beloved game show host and a true patriot, Chuck Woolery is here. The likable Mr. Woolery, of course, is known for his years as the main man on Love Connection, the often very funny dating show of the 80s and 90s, plus his work on many other programs and projects. What you may not know is that Woolery is also a common-sense conservative, and now he's doing something to help those of us who want to return to the days when our elected officials followed the Constitution. On the website SaveUsChuckWoolery.com, you can take a look and listen at Woolery's sensible, often funny, and important commentary. So if you have 2 and 2 to spare, please head on over and see what the buzz is about. Today, this TV legend joins us on SarahNet Radio. Chuck Woolery, thank you, sir, for joining us.
My pleasure, Kevin. It's nice to be with you.
Now, folks have really enjoyed your work over the years, and you are one of those rare guys that, you know, people feel they know you, even though they don't really know you due to their demeanor and presentation. How's that been for you? So many people really considering you almost an old friend, yet it was all through the magic of television, if you will.
Well, you know, in a way, I think people really do know me. Who I am on television, with the exception of giving away refrigerators, is really who I am. So, you know, it may be a TV version of me, which is a little more upbeat. I'm not that grumpy, but you know, I mean, it's kind of who I am. It's my personality. It's who I am. When I see people out, they do feel like they know me, and actually, I find that a good thing.
Absolutely. And, you know, people know you largely for Love Connection, and I remember watching, you know, I was a young guy at the time, watching with my grandmother, and really great memories. I mean, it was, you know, it was part of the day. You'd come home after school, do your thing, play outside, whatever, and then come back in, and it was on. And
hey, that's the same thing my wife said to me on my second date with her. I used to watch you with my grandma. Honestly, that's the absolute truth. She really did say that.
Well, you know what? It's true. And you know what? And I have not told my grandmother yet that you're on, so she's going to be thrilled about that, because a huge fan, always thought you were the best, and you know.
Thanks.
But
Thank
you know,
you.
I just vivid memories of just going back into the house, and you know, after playing baseball in the cul-de-sac, and heading back in there, and you know, watching you and doing your stuff. But you know, some of the younger crowd may not realize you were the original host of Wheel of Fortune.
I did. I brought Wheel on the air in 1975. I did it for 7 years, and then I went on to do Love Connection, Scrabble, Greed, Lingo, and something else in there. Oh yeah, Dating Game.
Now,
there's so many of them I can't remember.
Could you have ever imagined how the Wheel of Fortune show took off to really become an American staple when you did it for that time?
Yeah, because it was a kind of funny thing. I mean, Merv Griffin and I had a disagreement. We just had a problem, and we couldn't resolve it. But yeah, I was not surprised. I remember being in Vegas with Pat Sajak and Vanna when they took it over, and they were on daytime. And when I was on daytime, we were doing 44 shares. I mean, it was just huge. And so they said, well, we've got 25 stations, and you need 230 or whatever. And I said, just wait. You'll be all over the place before you realize what happened. And sure enough, it did in syndication exactly what it did in daytime. It just exploded. I was not surprised.
And Sajak's a conservative too, isn't he? What's with the good game show hosts?
You know, that's what I understand. I honestly didn't know that, but apparently he is.
Yeah, you all being on the ball otherwise too. So
well, we're maybe smarter than the average Hollywood person.
Well, listen, all those puzzles after a while they have to. You got to figure it out. Osmosis.
Something's got to sink in.
If nothing else, right? Now, listen, back to Love Connection. I got to tell you, my favorite memories of you were when you would just lose it. Like something funny would happen, and you would laugh so hard you'd almost cry, and people at home laughed with you just as hard.
Well, there were 2 ways. I remember when my producer, when we first started, he said, look, I'm going to brief you on all the dates. And we did that on one show, and after that show, I said, you know, please don't do that. And he said, why? I said, because if I know what's going to happen, then I can't react to it honestly, and I feel very uncomfortable. So let it just unfold in front of me like it does in front of the audience, and then I can actually be the surrogate audience. I will respond how they probably would respond anyway, and it'll be far more natural. And so he took my lead on that, thank goodness, and that's what happened. So I had no idea what they were going to say and where they'd been or anything. So it just kind of unfolded in front of me, and I was shocked every time and surprised and funny, and, you know.
It's always fun to look back now, too, to see some of the hair and the clothes of the contestants and whatnot.
The 80s and the 90s, nothing like it.
Now, you've been very active politically, especially of late. I know you started a PAC, and you are a proud conservative. Let me ask you this. Now, certainly you had a different realm being a host, not so much an actor, but have you felt any of the Hollywood backlash?
No, I'm too far. You know, I live in Texas now. I moved here about 5 years ago, so but I did before. I mean, I was not coy about if someone asked me, I would tell them. It was kind of like, you know, I didn't want to get in their face about it, and I knew they would disagree with me, and so people who I worked with pretty much knew where I stood, and they didn't like it, but you know, that's just the way it was, and I didn't argue with them. You know, I would try to make a point, but I was never belligerent about it, because you can't be with them. They start calling you names because that's all they've got, and they operate from a very emotional base. So liberals are highly emotional, and a lot of their information is emotionally charged, and so it's very difficult to get into a battle with them because you can beat them and you can win, but you know, it doesn't really do any good. They just resent you for it.
Let's see, it seems you worked it out the way it should be. I mean, if people want to disagree, that's fine, but you should be able to get along. Yeah, I had a professor in college at a time, and we know how, you know, what's going on in our school systems from all the way down to the little guys up to the universities now with trying to tell you things that they want to pass along as fact, you know, from the New York Times, what have you. I had one guy, though, I mean, you couldn't get further to the left, and we went at it, Hatfields and McCoys, about the Clinton-Bush race in '92, and I got an A. So, you know, that's okay, but the problem is I think that's the vast minority.
You're probably right. It is the vast minority. They hold a grudge. It's very interesting. I found that progressives really hold a grudge, and they're just mean about it. They really have kind of a mean attitude, and sometimes it's good for us to come back with that kind of belligerence too, because you've got to stand up for what you believe in. I really think that, and you've got to be armed with information. My big problem with what's happening with the electorate is people just aren't informed, and they don't care. I had a teacher over at the house the other night that teaches at a local school here, and I asked her some questions, and she had no clue what I was talking about. And I said, do you not just pay attention to this stuff? And she said, well, my husband tells me what's going on sometimes. I said, don't you think you should be just a little more informed, though, as to who you're going to vote for president and why? And she basically was down to whoever has the nicest smile. And this was a highly respected teacher in our community.
Yep.
And I thought, boy, you know, this is not good. But it reinforces what I think. And so what I'm trying to do with these videos is through humor and showing the hypocrisy in Washington. And I want to emphasize with humor, although it is sarcastic humor, it's just kind of waking people up and saying, you know, this is what's going on. You are really not aware of this stuff. And just give them snippets for 2 or 3 minutes of what's going on around them that they may not be aware of, and try to wake them up.
Kevin Scholla on the Palin Update on Serenet Radio. We have Chuck Woolery here today with us, and I do want to get into the videos more in depth in a moment. Real quick, though, you mentioned you being in Texas now. We had a fellow Texan on our show a few weeks back. Janine Turner was our guest.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, she, speaking of backlash and whatnot, she was talking about her recent gig with Friday Night Lights, and, you know, she said to us that it was great. Everybody was wonderful, this and that. All of a sudden, they found out she was campaigning for the McCain-Palin ticket in 2008, and then it got a little chilly on set.
Yeah, a lot of times when you advocate in a situation like that, it's just very difficult. You almost have to choose politics over career when you're in show business because it just comes down to where it's so highly volatile, and they are so negative toward you, they'll get rid of you any way they can.
Now let's get on to these great videos that are making the rounds on the internet. Save Us Chuck Woolery, they're called, the billing, and you talk about budget cuts and why we should not be taxing the rich, real conservative principles. My personal favorite, I got a chance
well,
to
I don't think we should tax anyone. Let me jump in with that real quick, not just the rich.
There you go. That's
or that is, I don't think we should raise.
We love you, Chuck.
Obviously, we need to tax people, but it shouldn't be the way it is, and we'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
Sure, and I got to tell you, I got a chance to take a look at these. My personal favorite, the unoccupying Wall Street.
Well, I'd like to take credit for that, but my business partner in Michigan, who runs an advertising agency, actually came up with that idea. He said it'd be a great idea just to have everybody not show up and show their full support. So I said that's cute. Well, we'll do that.
That's tremendous. Tell me this: you're in tune to these things. You're doing these commentaries. What is the key of turning Washington around right now? And do you see a candidate for president that fits the bill?
Well, no, president. The idea of president turning the country around doesn't work. I mean, they don't have. We have three branches of power, and obviously that's 1/3 of it. But the president is great to veto things. They're great, to advocate. They're great to appoint judges. After that, they're not so great for much of anything besides leadership, if they can possibly muster up that. And that involves compromise, which a lot of people don't like, me included. I don't like compromise, but. It's funny. Everybody always says, if I'm president, I'm going to do this, and if I'm president, I'm going to do that. Well, 90% of the stuff they say they can't do, and they won't be able to do unless they have a willing Congress. So it's very, very important, although we're kind of built on a divided government, to have a willing Congress. It's funny because Washington, one of his biggest problems was he said, if we break this thing up into parties, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Washington didn't speak like that. But he said if we have parties, my fear is they're going to be so partisan that they're going to forget the country, and that's exactly what's happened. We have people who are protecting their jobs, protecting their positions, protecting their power, and I mean, look, Keystone Pipeline, if that isn't a great example of someone, with just politically putting off the obvious until next year because of politics, it's not good for the country, but it's good for his reelection. I mean, it's wrong, and what the answer to that is, I think probably, if I had to guess, my answer would be term limits. And trying to get these guys to term limit themselves may be very, very difficult, but I'm actually going to spend the rest of my life doing what I can from my perspective and with whatever voice I have, trying to turn that around. And I'm working with the Cato Institute right now, and we're putting together a program to try to term limit these guys and really do it. And I think the only way you can do it is scare them, and the only way to scare them is frighten them with taking away their power. So you go state by state and just tell every congressman and every person there, we're going to come after you, and if you don't sign this thing, we're going to put you out of a job. Even if we like you, we're going to put you out of a job. And to reinforce that, I was watching Marco Rubio the other day on C-SPAN, so you can give some idea of how I spend my days. But I really like Marco Rubio. I like him a lot, and I'm watching him, and he's very smooth, and I like his positions. And I thought to myself, would I want to get rid of this guy? And I thought, yes, for the country, I would get rid of this guy. He can be replaced. All of these people can be replaced, and I resent the fact that these congressmen and senators are there for so long, that they are so incredibly corrupted that we can't get anything done. And that's the point. There's another thing. I don't mean to do a monologue here, but Kevin, you hear this every day, and so do I. Washington is broken. This is broken, and that's broken. It's not broken. It's totally corrupt. And until we, as voters and citizens, get together and start knocking these guys off, and giving them a 2-year term or a 4-year term or 1 6-year term, and then replacing them with other people, we're just not going to do well at all as a country. We just won't.
Well, you look back at the threats from the president of shutting down the government months back, and you wonder how some of these moderate and even some of the conservative Republicans who went along with it, how they would have voted if they're not campaigning all the time when you have a 2-year term that's, unlimited.
Hey, listen, let me tell you something. Jefferson was absolutely right when he said, if the people are afraid of the government, it's tyranny, and if the government's afraid of the people, it's liberty. He's absolutely right. And there has to be a quantum shift in politics in this country to where people take back that power that they have in order to take these guys' power away from them. Because if they don't, we're going to live in Western democratic socialism. And that's not fear-mongering. I just believe that's absolutely the truth. And we really have to take control of this ship. There's got to be a mutiny. I guess they used to call it a rebellion, but it's just it's got to happen. And I'm hopeful that it will. And the Tea Party, I think, was a great example of the possibility of that really coming together and people banding together and trying to straighten things out. So I know that everybody demonizes the Tea Party because, they want stuff like balancing the budget, and you just go, yeah, boy, that's extreme.
Yeah, all those crazy things like liberty and freedom and, wild ideas.
I don't even listen to that. That's just garbage. That's just, progressive garbage.
What you mentioned about the pipeline, though, and, everybody's talking about the economy and lack of jobs. You're talking about instant jobs there, and then you see a president who, like you said, wants to push this off until the campaign is over and he gets in for another term. I think this speaks to what you mentioned about that teacher that you ran into who didn't know what the heck was going on. You would think if anybody said, wait a minute, we need jobs, this creates jobs, they're blocking these jobs, we got to vote these characters out. Right. But you have so much apathy and so many people not like us who are, into this, so to speak. You would think anybody living in this great country would want to be into the process, but it's just not the case.
I'll tell you something. There's the oldest statement in the world, probably stands true for most people, and that is, you can't fight City Hall. Well, yes, you can. You can also teach an old dog new tricks. Trust me, you can do all this stuff they said you can't do. You just have to believe that you can do it. Yet there's plenty of support out there. There are other people in the community that want to support you, that agree with you. Find them, seek them out, and put together your own coalition. You can go against anybody and be successful. These people are afraid of us, and they should be. The only problem is we have to make them afraid of us. You have to make them afraid of your vote. Because they'll say anything and do anything to keep the power that they've got. It's just it's disheartening in a way, and yet at the same time, thank God for Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison, all of those guys, because they really did put together a great system. We need to get back. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I said, the problem is that all the progressives say you got to lean forward, you got to be progressive, things change, they evolve. Our problem is this: we have a football team that's in serious trouble, and we need a Lombardi to come in and get back to the fundamentals. We need a John Wooden to come in and take over our basketball team and teach these guys fundamentals. And that's basically what we have to do in our government. We've got to get back to the fundamentals of this government. And if we do, we'll be successful, even though I think Benjamin Franklin wasn't that convinced we would last that long.
Yeah.
When he said, I've given you a republic if you can hold it. So,
sure. How did you start doing these commentaries?
Well, a friend of mine and I spent the summer in Michigan this summer riding motorcycles with my buddy, and one day we stopped for lunch, and I said, I got an idea. I think I could save America $1 trillion at a time if I really put my mind to it. And he thought that was funny. He said, well, let's do a PSA. And I said, well, okay. So we went over to his house, and we wrote out 3 PSAs, and I said, well, what are we going to do with these things? He said, we'll put them on YouTube. We'll see if Breitbart or Beck or somebody like that will take it. And, I don't know. They were just funny. Tax the Amish has no repercussions. We just, took on the Amish because they don't watch TV. And we hit Matt Damon and all this, but it was just kind of stuff that we, thought about and thought was kind of funny the way we approached it. And so we put it out, and all of a sudden they just went viral, and I just came back from doing 15 more of them. Well, we could do these for the rest of my life and never run out. The stuff is just, the dirt is so rich. Yeah. All you have to do is dig a little,
Yeah, there's no lack. There's no lack of supplies, right? How People watch them?
Well, you can go to SaveUsChuckWoolery.com. I know that just sounds so. That was my buddy's idea to say that. And I said, well, that's just so ridiculous. He said, well, I know, but so are we. So SaveUsChuckWoolery.com, and or you can go to YouTube and put my name in and SaveUsChuckWoolery.com, and and the YouTube site will come up. But, you know, I'd like for you to go to my site. But anyway,
Sure.
You can watch them. They're all there.
Sure. And I know, just like Governor Palin, your faith is very important to you. Can you tell us quickly before we go what you've been doing to spread God's message, too? I know that you are a devout Christian.
I am. I was, you know, I had a conversion experience when I was 25 years old, and actually traveled, got started in the music business. I left Pillsbury Company as a salesman and went on the music business with a friend of mine, Elkin Fowler, who was a youth pastor, and we actually, well, I guess not revivals. We didn't do that. We were probably the first people to ever take back then folk music into a sanctuary situation and kind of entertain kids and then give our testimony and try to lead them to the Lord. And we were successful, and you know, and we went on and built that, and then it turned into a musical career in Nashville, and that turned into a television career in Los Angeles. But I never lost that faith. I still, probably one of the most important people in my life, oddly enough, is my second wife, who introduced me to Pat Boone, who introduced me to Jack Hayford, who was just an awesome pastor in Los Angeles, who I got to sit at his feet for about 25 years, and just, you know, sat there and fed, man, just every Sunday, every Wednesday, every time I get together. So my faith has been so important in my life, and getting me over the rough spots and understanding why I had the good spots, and sharing it with other people when they want to know. Again, that's another thing. I don't get in people's face about it, but they ask me, I'll answer them. And so it's just, you know, God's been really good to me, and I'm very grateful and very thankful for it.
And you mentioned your motorcycles. What else are you up to? Fishing still?
I fish every day if I can. If the weather permits, I have a boat underneath my house, which is why I moved here, and I bass fish every day. It's another passion of mine that I really love to do, and I've been called by many people to say, you know, you want to do a show, and I went, no, I just want to go fishing and enjoy myself. I don't want to make a living out of it.
That's great. Good for you. Right. You know, that wasn't why you were doing it originally, right?
No, that would ruin it for me.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Chuck Woolery, really a pleasure talking to you. You know, you have a great following, and everybody, you know, thinks you're a great guy, and we'd have to...
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the air. God bless you guys and your audience, and thanks for watching the videos, and I'll keep them coming. We're going to keep them out at once every couple of weeks, probably. We're going to have one come out for maybe ever.
Great. Listen, we're going to spread the word. We'll get the link out there on SarahNet, and
okay.
you know, hopefully everybody will take a look. And Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Well, thank you. Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
All right, Chuck. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Chuck Woolery, lots of fun, and a man fighting the fight now day in and day out. Make sure you check out SaveUsChuckWoolery.com for all the commentaries, and also head over to ChuckWoolery.com. Governor Palin made quite a splash in a piece she penned this past week in USA Today. The message was clear. Congress, it's time to stop lining your pockets. Palin eloquently examined everything from sweetheart deals to IPO stock gifts to insider trading. She used words like unethical to describe the circus in Washington, and she touched on how the SEC never goes after a powerful Congress member or senator who's doing wrong. Governor Palin also addressed the harsh truth that insider trading isn't the only corruption problem. Crony capitalism, Palin says, has, quote, run rampant for too long and is bankrupting our country, unquote. She points to conflict of interest provisions on earmarks as one remedy to the D.C. debacle. Palin ends her well-written view with this food for thought. We, the people, are not going to give up until we get the sudden and relentless reform we deserve, or we throw them all out in 2012. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. Be sure to visit SarahNetRadio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, follow us on Twitter at SarahNet Radio, and we are now on Facebook, so make sure you like SarahNet Radio on Facebook. I want to thank everyone here at SarahNet Radio. Thanks to Mr. Chuck Woolery, and thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.